Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code CASUALMAGIC to get 10% off your sale. And by Archidect, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam and Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Coalesce Apparel, Cool Stuff Inc., and Archidect. Today, I have a dear friend of mine on the show, one of the coterie of the Loading Ready Run crew, and frankly, just a person I like a lot. My friend Nelly. How's it going, bro? He's like, the judge up there for the LRR PPRs and a co-host of a handful of their podcasts and streams and shows, and shows up to play Glurp on their Fun Channel. One of my favorite possible non-Magic things that LRR does. I love that stupid game so much. But also just an incredibly kind dude that I've just become friends with over the years that I just really enjoy talking to. And since it's my show, I get to have my friends on. How's it going, Nelly? How's it going?
Hello, Shivam. It's going quite well. Just been busy being a dad and churning out Magic content lately.
I can't imagine what that could possibly be like.
Right? It's weird that we get along.
Yeah. How could it be that I, a dad who turns out Magic content, would be friends with you, a dad who turns out Magic content?
Yeah. I really like that introduction. I'm going to go back and listen to this podcast just so I can nail that exact tempo of delivery. Ah, yes, Nelson, one of the members of the coterie of LRR gang. You may have seen him standing awkwardly behind the 8-foot-tall Adam Savadan.
Jesus Christ, dude, you know what's weird to me? The first time I met, Adam looks tall even when he's sitting down. We just know Adam is tall. But I didn't understand is that everybody there is tall.
Yeah, that gets you when you've only seen this all on the internet.
Well, because when you look at Wheeler sitting down, Wheeler doesn't look like he's going to stand up and keep going.
Yeah,
like he stands up and it's like, oh, you're not stopping. Oh, that keeps going. Oh God, what's going on?
Yeah, I blend in more with the guests.
Yeah, and like I remember you walk in and you see Adam, Serge, Graham, and Wheeler, and just
James
standing next to each other.
Too. Yeah.
And they're just standing next to each other, and you're like, oh, that's just a normal group of humans at a normal height. And then Kathleen walks by waist height, and you're like, oh, this is not normal.
Yeah, it's like you see Ian standing next to Graham and Serge and Adam, and you're like,
oh yeah, Ian is also huge.
Yeah, but then you see Corey come over, you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah,
Corey is also
shorter.
Tall.
She's a little tiny bit shorter than the rest of them, just a little tiny bit. And then I walk up to them, and it's like, oh yeah, I can barely reach their shoulders. It's cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. In most places, I'm considered a medium to tall person. In there, I am definitely not.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, but so I've always wondered, you're Canadian too, right?
I am Canadian. Yeah, I've lived here.
Did you grow up in Victoria?
Mostly, yes. Not in the same hood as the rest of the sort of early days core of LRR, but I had lived in Victoria for most of my life. I bounced around some other provinces in the early days, but then since grade 4, my family landed here, and then I've only left for a couple years to go to university.
Well, I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
It's, I was talking to James and he was like, why would I ever leave? This is a beautiful island and I can see the entire universe from here. I'm like, that is fair. We were standing on a giant mountaintop looking out at the sound and then over to Washington State and everything. I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe I wouldn't leave either if I lived on a tropical paradise in the middle of the ocean. But it's still good to just get exposure to the rest of the country and world and just realize why you like the place you live.
Yeah, we get hit with that, and Ben Ulmer was telling me in great detail and right away, just as soon as we got to Command Fest Bellevue a few weeks back, it feels so good to be anywhere except Victoria. That's just the pandemic talking, but I think that kind of lands on plenty of sort of younger people who live here, because it is a hard place to convince yourself to leave. There's so many great things about living here.
Well, yeah, I mean it's stunning. It's beautiful. It's also very hard to get onto or off of.
Right. Yeah, you're a little bit stuck once you got it. Yeah, it's kind of a corner.
when I came for the PPR for the Baldur's Gate PPR, that day there was like a fake terrorist attack or something at the Victoria Airport. The most excitement they've probably seen in like 100 years,
Oh yeah.
and they shut the airport down, so we had to fly back to Vancouver. And then I was like calling James. I'm like, "Can I just drive over?" And he's like, "There is no bridge between there and here." And I'm like,
There is a
"How do I get?"
highway though. Yeah.
And I'm like, "How do I get there?" He's like, "The ferry." And I'm like, "That's like a year travel on a boat." He's like, "See you in a year."
Yeah. Yeah. We all know about that ferry and the ways in which it distorts our ability to interact with the rest of the world. Um, the airport
Yeah,
does rarely shut down, fortunately, but
it's such a small airport too.
there's a lot of like middle distances you might be interested in that you would typically drive to. Like, it's funny reading about other people's magic reports, like, around Midwest, or the NRG
Yeah.
series is happening regularly. Or back, Star City days back when like the Legacy community was big, and you read people's tournament reports about going from one show to the next, weekend after weekend, or talking to other judges about like the runs that they
Yeah.
strung together. It's like, yeah, I guess if you live kind of anywhere to the west of like
Here.
Colorado, sorry, to the east of Colorado, and you're in the States, it's like you're probably somewhere where you can drive to like 8 different cities comfortably. And like, I kind of just have this boat to Vancouver that only leaves every couple hours, and sometimes not at all, or it breaks or something, or
But
you
they have
can't get
really
on.
good brownie things on there.
That's true. We do have treats. We've got some
Yeah.
sweets for you.
Dude, this past weekend I drove down to LA. I live in San Francisco and I drove down to
That's a
LA
big
for
drive, right? Yeah.
talking for Tabletop Jocks or whatever. And it's a 6.5 hour drive.
Mm,
Like the joke is from San Francisco, if you drive a day north or a day south, you're still in California,
yeah.
you know? And like when you think about how far we have, like I was talking to Cedric about like Star City games. I'm like, why didn't you guys ever come out west? He's like, because if I'm in Tennessee, all the players from Ohio and New York and Pennsylvania and Georgia can come. If I have one in San Francisco, all the players from San Francisco can come and nobody else, because everything is a million years away. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's fair. That's really, really fair. Um, but yeah, so how did you get in with the crew?
Okay, yeah, my introduction to Loading Ready Run is, I don't know, it's like, I guess, pretty mundane. The
Well, what
truth
did you do
is,
at uni?
okay, at university, I was studying music. There's a really good music school here, especially if you played trombone during the years
I
that I was
played
studying.
trombone.
Well, if you wanted to go to school for trombone, you could have gone to UVic in the early 2000s and studied with Ian McDougall of the Canadian jazz legend, which I tried to do out of high school and was nowhere near good enough. So what I did was I found a pretty close. Actually, the truth is my aunt found it. My cousin was going to school for voice at community college, but a fairly close community college where I could go live for reasonable rent with my aunt and uncle and cousin. And then I went and studied trombone at Kwantlen College for 2 years, and then re-auditioned to get into UVic, and then came back, and then I got to study with the more renowned, sort of fancier teachers a little
Do you
bit.
play jazz trombone?
I play some jazz trombone. I haven't played a ton of trombone in the past like 10 years or so, but my real roots in music are in like ska. Like that's the sort of music that I
Ah,
like got into
because
outside of
we are
school.
90s kids, that's why.
Yeah, no, for sure. I have no shame about that. I like Jamaican music. I'll listen to reggae music and stuff, or rocksteady. Yeah. Ba-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I know what song you're singing. Yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah,
was
dude.
me. I
I
still wear
like
Vans.
I did until my feet were like, "Yo, you're too old for this and you need support."
Oh,
But yeah, like during pandemic, I was teaching my son. I was like, I need to find something to fill the time with, and I grabbed my old trombone. I gave it a good cleaning after 30
nice.
years or whatever, and I oiled it up. And I'm like, "All right, we're going to teach you how to play an instrument." His arms don't reach all the way to sixth position, but I'm like, "You can make noises with this at least."
Yeah.
And so it sounded like a dying elephant in my house for a few months.
Yeah. It's neat having gone to music school now and learning a little bit about what it's like to learn all the instruments. By the way, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself. I have orthotics in my Vans. So I like that's probably a
That's
fair
age.
that's like a thing that could be like my like on my like line item on my resume, or like the motto above my
Your
office door.
autobiography title.
Yeah, it's like, who's that guy? Oh, he has orthotics in his Vans. Um, but yeah, learning any given instrument early on, it's like trombone, I want to say is about third. I mean, unless you count oboe or something, but like violin and drums are both probably sort of the hardest on the parents. I mean, it depends how fast you kind of
Oh
get the
god, if you
tuning
play
with
a
violin.
violin wrong, it's just like I'm like it sounds like,
Yeah,
Czechoslovakian noise or something.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same problem you have with trombone, where you're not pushing a button, so you're not able to like lock in a tuning. So you're constantly finding the tuning, and you're working on your ear at the same time as learning your instrument for the first time. It's like both just result in so much pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But I mean, like, if you're playing a reed instrument and you blow wrong, that thing is just gonna squonk at you like an angry goose, and then you're like, "Oh, no, this is bad." And then you're like, "Wait, I'm playing South Indian music on, like, the oboe reed, and it's supposed to squonk." Um,
There you go. And you're going for those quarter tones sometimes in
mhm.
the Indian scales, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's microtonal scales are really trippy, especially until you learn how to listen to them, they can sound really, really
Right.
off, but once you key in, it's like, "Oh, this is actually sick."
Yeah, once you're used
Um,
to hearing the notes on the scale, then it sounds great.
yeah. Like, I've been listening to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard lately because Kathleen introduced me, and, they've got anyway, you know what? I'm not gonna talk about that because that's, like, 4 years of not us talking about things.
Okay,
Um,
I'll tell you how I met LRR.
yeah.
We'll bring it back
Sorry.
to that one. No, you're
I'm
good.
like,
You want to
you
fight away from
discovered
me.
a topic that I have not talked about that I'm also deeply passionate about. And I'm like,
Awesome.
"Oh, I could talk about microtonal music and trombones, let's go."
I'm looking
Like, for
forward to
instance,
my next podcast assignment already. Yeah.
yeah, on the drive back from freaking, LA, I was listening to an interview Mark Maron did with Trombone Shorty, who's one
Okay.
of my favorite modern jazz musicians.
Yeah. Trombone
Literally,
Shorty's
he's
great.
a New Orleans, jazz guy who plays trombone. It's in the name. Very, very good. But anyways, how LRR, you used to work at a store, right?
Yes. So pretty shortly after university, um, and near the end of the university, I sort of noticed like, oh, okay, I'm spending a lot of my time while I'm practicing just daydreaming about brewing decks. So that kind of led me to realizing like, okay, I want to be spending more of my time at F&M and like at the shop. So I got a job at Yellow Jacket Comics, which was fortunate and like kind of a little dream of like young Nelly for sure. Like, the 12-year-old who'd first picked up the trombone but was already deeply into magic cards and D&D
Mhm.
would have been happy. And I was too. It was great. Still very fond memories of working that job. But one of the things that happened was LRR came in and wanted to film at YJ. And first they needed like someone behind the counter to be their stand-in, right? Like sort of play an approximation of
Yeah,
yourself.
you showed up on, like, Friday nights or whatever.
Yeah, well, this was even before they had. I think it was before they had Friday nights. They just did like an episode of Commodore Hustle or something. Like the first year before the pitch to have Friday nights with Watsy happened, there were some sketches that Lur just wanted to do at FNM or of them getting into Magic. And so like
Sure.
first they had the boss Ed, along with longtime coworkers still there. Both of them still there. Dan inside the sketch, and then the next time they came by, I was there, and then the story goes like when they asked again, I was the one who said, "Yeah, I would do that again." Like sort of like got the best response from me in terms of having fun working in
Sure.
this sketch. So then I just turned into me being regular on Friday nights, and then uh, I had kids and stopped working so much at YJ in order to be a full time dad. But
Mm.
Graham had just had a kid shortly before I did, so we started having some play dates and going to the same playgrounds or whatever.
Oh, handy.
And then he decided like, okay, if you'd like, I'd like you to come on a tap and seat every week. And then shortly after that, like about another year later, this is like near the beginning of the pandemic now, or just the year before, I started getting like kind of the offer to do whatever calls like LRR does in their schedule.
That's
So
sweet, man.
so writing the sketches and like appearing on some other streams, I'll be on some other LRR gaming streams, and yeah, sort of just part of the crew now.
That's good, though. That's really organic and cool way to just kind of become a new member. Because I remember,
Yeah, it was
like,
slow. Yeah, yeah,
I remember when you joined the, Tap Tap Concede, and I was like, "Oh, this is a new voice. I don't know if I like this."
sure.
But once you found your rhythm, I'm like, "This guy is cool." And then, of course, when we actually met, like, at various events or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, this guy is actually just great, and we're friends
Aw,
now, and it's good."
thanks.
Um, but the thing I find you most interesting is that, like, you bring a very Wheeler-esque depth of knowledge, which is like, you know our game inside and out because you're a judge too, and you've also got a very level-headed, like, not attached to any format so that you
Mm,
can look at a card and just be like, "Where does this go? Where does this belong?" And it's a because one of the problems is a lot of us are specialists,
right.
and, like, you look at it like it took me years to get over the fact of looking at a card and be like, "This is crap. Why would you ever want it?" And someone's like, "Well, if you have 4 of them in your standard deck, you win." And I was like, "Oh, right. Standard. right, 4 of a kind. That makes his card way better. And then but you've just got this ability to be able to look at cards and actually see them through the lens of Canlander or Vintage or Legacy or Modern, whatever,
Yeah, they lean
which
on me
is
for that a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
because let's be real, I love my people at LRR a lot. They're some of my dearest friends. They're some of your dearest friends, but they approach Magic at a very casual level, which is good for the purposes that they need to. But that also means that they're not format specialists unless you're Wheeler, who is like, I don't specialize in formats, I create them. But having someone like you who's actually got like the chops is actually really, really beneficial to the content.
Yeah, Wheeler and I have a lot in common. He also worked at YJ.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, was a judge, passed his L1. Um, not that he passed his L1 kind of just before I got my L2, so I didn't actually mentor Wheeler. Another L2 on
Mm.
the island did, but sort of putting him in the right direction. I was like judging a little bit before he was, and
There
then yeah,
must be like
also
what, 4 judges on Victoria or something?
there's been a fluctuating number. I'm not sure, like, the state of tournaments in
Sure.
Canada is some different things, but yeah, there were for a little while there. There was like four of us or three of us that were L2s and regularly playing in town.
Oh, were you an L2?
Yeah, I'm an L2.
Oh,
Yeah, I like haven't been super active this past couple of years. Surprise, surprise. Although there are events happening now in the states, so plenty of L2s are active now. But I haven't been judging at tournaments a whole bunch. Just doing the PPRs and like people will hit me up with questions online somewhat regularly as well. Um,
yeah,
and
like, I I find it very handy to be able to do so.
Yeah, and then Wheeler and I have also been both of us are involved in kind of the continuation of the early days of the Highlander format. Wheeler obviously much more so in the gladiator side of things. We've gotten to see that a bit.
What was your involvement with Canlander?
So this is so funny. I'm talking to you about this, and I just recorded my North 100 intro earlier today. I'm going to be on North 100 regularly going forward.
Oh,
That's the
that's
plan
sweet.
anyway. Yeah. So it's funny. I'm just telling the story again. But the year is 2008. Nelson has just started working at Yellow Jacket. Shadow Moor just dropped, and the casual format that people have been playing in between rounds of standard FNM or like before drafts start has taken over to the point where people just want to be jamming it really regularly. And I basically just succeeded or succumbed to the pressure of the community and said, hey, we should try to have a tournament of this Highlander format. And then after a few weeks, it was like, okay, we can't just let the people who own the Black Lotus and the Power Nine win all the games. We need to have something like a band list. So we settled on this points list. And then a while after that, it was like, okay, we're going to have a council, and then those people will make the points decisions. There was this wacky year, like I want to say 2010 or something, where I was just running a true republic in Yellow Jacket, where every single card that was on the points list or that you wanted to be on the points list, we would have a vote. We'd have like a brief sermon about the card. It's like, okay, Black Lotus is currently worth 4 points. Does anyone care about that? Do we need it
4
to be more?
points!
Something like that, like back in 2010. There was a little while, the early days of the points, because what we did was we just stole the Australian 60 card 7 point list and just
Mm.
ported it over immediately. We knew that the points values would be probably too high because we're less likely to hit the cards, but then then we balanced it a bit, but we overshot a little, and then we brought it's the storied history
Why
of
do they
the
100
Highlander.
cards?
Why 100 cards?
Yeah, why not 60?
That wasn't a decision that had been decided before I came along.
Mm.
There was a prismatic scene in Victoria. That's like
The only place that
250
plays
cards.
prismatic.
Yeah, 250 card. You have to play a certain number of each color minimum,
Yeah, it
and
was like
and it's singleton.
prismatic was prismatic is weird because it's like the format that gave birth to like so many singleton formats.
Yeah,
Commander exists because of prismatic. Canlander exists because of prismatic. And
yeah.
nobody plays that because who's got the time to shuffle 250 cards?
Yeah, I think probably there were the prismatic players, and they wanted to be able to bring their decks outside of their house. So it's like, if we're gonna meet not in my basement, then let's shrink the decks down so they fit in a box. I'm gonna guess. I don't know.
And 100's a nice even number.
Yeah, I'm making that part up. We're allowed to play more though. You can play Battle of Wits in Canadian Highlander if you want to.
Oh, I thought it was a fixed limit the way EDH is.
No.
Because I've been trying to thinking about building a Canlander deck for years, but every time I do, I go up to Victoria and get stomped by like Surge, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do this.
Oh. Hey,
It's those decks are like, because like I like to say that Commander's Legacy Light, but if Commander's Legacy Light, then Canlander is just straight vintage.
Yeah, I mean, you have draws in Canlander that are like they are the vintage draws. Like you can have a whole game of vintage where you're just like, okay, I was allowed to play that in Canadian Highlander. Like the points list allowed all of those cards, and you didn't draw two of or anything. So that
Yeah,
that totally happens. Also, Legacy Light. I'm so sorry, Shiva. That's Popper's name. You got to give that back to Popper.
fair. Popper is you know what? People like underestimate Popper because it's just common cards. How bad could it be? No, you don't understand. Popper is like one of the most cutthroat formats in Magic.
I think
Like,
of it as the closest thing we have to chess, where it's
it
like
is
there's still luck, it's
brutal.
still magic, but it's like the matchups dictate a fair bit in Popper. Like
Oh,
the cards
dude.
you bring to the table are like doing their job most of the time.
Like, I play elves and Pauper, and the elf deck is absurd, and
Right.
it goes ham until it runs into the Demir deck, which is just like, I'm gonna bounce everything you have to your hand and then screw you. Or like, burn and someone's like, "Hey, Pyroclasm was a common one." Whoosh, and like,
Yeah. Hey, Fire Blast
no.
is allowed in this format. That card's cool, right?
It is Pauper. People are like, "You should play Pauper." I'm like, "Dude, if I wanted to play Vintage, I'll play Vintage."
Right. No, that's fair.
Uh,
But yeah, Canadian Highlander being like goofy vintage is pretty fair because you have draws in Canadian Highlander that are like the vintage draw.
yes. I think Canlander is really a fun format. It's really interesting, and I like seeing all the deck variety that comes. And having only 20 life, having only 1v1 definitely gives it a different tenor and tone than like the more casual commander. I mean, you can still build casual Canlander decks, but Canlander's the place where you get to do things like I want to play Elf Ball with like Glimpse of Nature and Moxes and go off and do all this crazy nonsense.
Yeah, you're
Um,
allowed to play Biorhythm. It's okay.
Biorhythm is not okay.
Well, in
It's like
Canlander,
never
when you have one
okay.
opponent, it's okay, right?
Yeah, I guess it's not that.
We
Yeah,
haven't
it's like
pointed it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
you can still play Prophet of Krufix if you really want to in a
Yeah.
1v1. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I was gonna say though, like if just being beaten by Surge is like getting you down or getting crushed is getting you down, um, I'm
no,
sorry, but like, yeah, I'll lend you a deck or something. We could go through like regular lines or anything like that. I just want to encourage you if you're just getting beat. I listened to
like
your last podcast. You built Miriam or you wanted to build Miriam or whatever, and you showed up
yeah.
to a convention. Everybody else had Miriam, and they were all stomping you. It's like, oh no, don't get disheartened. I felt bad.
Well, you can't go to the prom in the same dress as everybody else.
Oh no, you gotta like you just gotta alter it just enough so that it's your prom dress. It's gonna fit you better. That's the thing. That's why they have those articles in the trashy magazines about who wore it better.
Yeah, like
Gotta make them think they're wearing your prom dress, not you're
maybe
wearing
you and
their
I need
prom
to sit
dress.
down and have a few minutes where we sit and actually just help me deck build some things.
All right.
Because honestly, I'll be honest with you, one of my biggest weaknesses in all of Magic is doing the actual deck building stuff, which I've gotten better because I have to, but it's not my favorite part of the game. Like I want
Sure.
to play,
Yeah, you like
and
playing,
that's
right?
why I love precon so much or just being handed a deck. But like when it comes to me trying to build a deck, it's like, oh God. And I get all hung up in feelings and emotions, and I'm like, I can't cut Serendipity. It's my boy. And it's like, no, you can cut Serendipity. That's the other reason I want to play Canlander because I can do things like play Serendipity.
I mean, Serendipitous's still decent.
It's
It's
a
three
great, dude.
at 3 mana. It's starting to get some serious competition. The last few years have been pretty wild for Canadian Highlander, but you can definitely still play Serendipity.
It's just there's something about going turn one Island Soul Ring, turn two Serendipity that just makes me happy.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
a good opener. That's a
you can
classic.
hold up Spell Pierce behind that in Canadian Highlander, and it's like a solid play. You're probably winning that game.
Do I mean, I guess people don't play Fierce Guardianship in that, but or you could play Force of Negation or something.
Yeah,
Um, actually,
absolutely. All
hmm,
right,
hmm.
we're building decks together,
You're
Shivam. It's
making me
okay.
think here,
No,
but like, because it's funny because like you and I have one of the things that I found really fun is that like you've started trying to play Minecraft for the same reason I did, which is my kid wants to play Minecraft, so I should
yeah,
learn this game. And so watching you learn Minecraft like 3 months after I learned Minecraft makes me feel like suddenly I'm super expert here. So I'm like, let
there we
me
go.
tell you how to do this. And jumping into your streams to help you do that has been a lot of fun lately.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, my kids have. Well, I mean, summertime hit, so they kind of moved off and playing the Switch at
Yep.
all, and there's been some really exciting Magic to play lately on stream. Like I
Yes.
did a whole bunch of streams of the Gladiator queue while it was around. I'm really hoping that comes
Dude,
back sometime soon.
I heard it was, I mean, everybody was in love with that, man. Gladiator was hella fun to
It's a
play.
cool format. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's very different from Canadian Highlander, but it's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping we get the same kind of run that Brawl got, where it was like they just teased us with Brawl, and everyone was like, "Let us play Brawl! Come on, I'll boot up
You
the
know,
app for Brawl." You know,
it makes me sad that the traditional real Brawl got misbranded and mislabeled and then killed, and then
mm,
replaced by historic Brawl, which is not the same, not as
sure.
fun, and just it makes me mad. Like, I wanna
You
play
miss standard
standard.
Brawl, yeah. You
I
like
miss
the
standard
regular
Brawl.
regular
I
Brawl, yeah.
love 60 card,
Sure.
like, singleton, just cheap draft crap legends, but, like, historic Brawl, and then suddenly you got the alchemy cards, and it's all weird, and, like, no, I
Mm.
don't want this. This is not the game I want.
All right, I
I
could talk about alchemy more, but let me hang on to this point for a second. I want to know what it was like for you at rotation. Because did we get to one like when Brawl, or when was it when
'Cause I
Zendikar came
started
out
playing Brawl when it first came out, which
with
was
Throne, or which
no,
set?
it came out with, Kaladesh.
Okay, Kaladesh.
'Cause it was
Right.
like the original Brawl deck I have is a Sahili Rai Brawl deck from, like, in paper, which is a Kaladesh Brawl, which was it was during Kaladesh Amonkhet block, and then they started bringing to Arena with Dominaria, and
Okay.
because I remember I had, like, uh, a Slimefoot Brawl deck,
Right.
and I had also an Amonkhet one with, Sorin, Orzhov Sorin. I forget
Okay.
which one he was, but Orzhov Sorin was my boss, and it had, like, Crested Sunmare and all this black white life gain stuff.
Oh,
It
nice.
was a super fun day. Like, I love playing sealed, like, limited pool formats of Magic, not just like draft,
Right.
but like, here's a pile of cards, build something out of it.
You like
Which is why,
block? Did you play block constructed at all
I
back in the
love
days of
block
block?
constructed.
Okay,
I
cool.
love block constructed. And like, my favorite way to play commander is like sealed box, right? Like,
Okay.
bust open a which, yes, fans, I understand, is very limited to people who just happen to have booster boxes sitting around, but I was one of them, and being able to just crack open a box of Ikoria and build a whole EDH deck out of it is a blast. That's what my Netherite deck came from. um but like, I loved Brawl because it forced you to use like crap commons, things that are like, a 2/3 for 5 that comes out and has some random, like, put a +1/+1 counter on it, buddy. Um but when you make it an eternalized historic format, then it's just bad commander.
Sure.
It's not even like, it's not Canlander, it's not Gladiator, it's just
Yeah.
bad commander with a weird pool.
But it's 1v1 because it's on Arena, so it's sort of
Yeah.
French Commander or
But
Dual
like
Commander or whatever, yeah.
but you asked about rotation. The thing about
Yeah.
rotation for me is that in playing Brawl, I played Brawl the way it was originally intended by like Garrett and Gavin, which is, hey, you go to pre-release, you go to Friday Night Magic, you go to draft, you have a pile of cards that you've used that are now never going to show up in your collection again. They're
Right.
not for your like EDH decks. Obviously, they're not going to show up in standard or modern. They're
Mhm.
just random crap beaters, day in day out C pluses for draft. What are you going to do with them? Hey, if you take one of each and just throw them into a deck with a random legend you cracked out of your pack, boom, you now have a Brawl deck, and when it's time for rotation, whatever, throw it away. You got a new pre-release kit, build a new one. Like,
Sure.
it
Okay.
didn't matter to me. It was like giving cards that were already dead one last chance to go and enjoy themselves and be alive. And then when you're done, well, they're just bulk and you toss them or give them away to somebody, or do what I did, which is leave them in your drawer and pull them out for fun times when you just want casual fun Magic.
Okay.
But a lot of people were like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and sculpt this and build a real deck and acquire cards to make a super powered perfect deck because that's just what I do when I'm deck building. And I'm like, if you try to optimize Brawl, yes, you can do it and you can be insanely powerful decks. Fine. But then when rotation hits, you're going to be pissed because you invested money in this.
Right.
And the whole point is not to invest money, but to take the things you have and just do it again. Just use them a second time, the way we did when we were kids. You're like, I cracked these packs. I've got things to do. I guess I should just use them, because you use them or throw them away. And somewhere in there, the spirit got lost and it was miscommunicated as like, look, it's now commanderish on Arena. I'm like, and
Right.
once you do that, then all the people are like, well, why isn't it real commander? Why can't it be a 100 card? Why can't it be eternal format?
Right. So okay, I get it. So the whole issue of rotation with Brawl for you is like it, it's happening anyway, and there's no additional things lost because the cards that you're playing in Brawl, or the decks you're building in Brawl, you should only be building out of the cards that you already opened for draft or you already opened for sealed or whatever. And a lot of people just don't approach deck building like that. It's
Right.
our conversation science. It really seems like it's been revolving around like the many ways of playing Magic, like how different it is, and the all the different axes for it being different, right? Like on the one hand, there's the formats, and they can be divided into limited and constructed. And then on the other hand, there's just like the approach, like you mentioned, like, oh, I really have a tough time with deck building because I don't want to cut my favorite cards, my pet cards or whatever. And I always start off with 300 cards to build a 100 card deck. And like we all do, the way you do. And you're not the only person, even like at Lure, right, that like just prefers to play and just loves it when they get to sit down and have a deck hand to them. I actually like that. I like deck building too, but like it depends.
Like
I've got a certain tolerance for deck building. So there's a certain number of decks I can build every year.
exactly.
Yeah.
There are
So
people for whom deck building is the art that they're here for, and there are people for whom I just want to like. I like precons. I like dual decks because here's a thing that's already built that I can just pull out, play. Like Jumpstart, favorite way to play Magic right now.
right,
2 packs I don't care about, just shuffle open. Boom! Now I've got Elven Unicorns. Let's go. What does that mean? I'll figure it out when I play.
Jumpstart's
It's like I don't care. It's a pre-made deck. It's going to guaranteed to have mana. Let's go.
yeah. No, I really like Jumpstart as well. Sorry, I was bringing up the whether you want to build decks
Yes,
point or not,
or play.
because uh, in there right around when I was starting with Lure, I just wanted to say like one of my connections is that
Yes, please.
Lure did a bunch of them played FNM, like they played standard back when like Innistrad
Mm,
and Return to Ravnica were the standard blocks.
sure.
And I don't know if any of them, maybe Jeremy Petter for a little while. I'm not sure if anyone really made it past rotation. And there's a certain kind of player that like gets in because standard's often the first thing that you pitch when you walk into an LGS. I did that for years, pitch standard, because it's the easiest one to teach generally. If you're like smaller card pool, a certain number of cards you're going to see every week, so you can kind of get used to the opponent's tricks the fastest.
Hmm.
And like yeah, obviously it kind of makes the store and the company the most money too. I sympathize with that. But then if
Really
you
standard instead of limited?
well, limited's a little bit cheaper overall most of the time, but when you're playing a game of limited, there's actually usually quite a few more cards that you need to worry about your opponent having if you're trying to like learn the like maximum strategy and have a like good chance to like win your games. Like if you're just learning the rules, sure, limited's fine. In fact, you could just be playing with free cards that like your old roommate left you, or like you paid $10 for on Craigslist and you got like a
Mm.
thousand cards or something. Like that's fine. But I think if you're trying to learn the intricacies of the format, you want something like a dual decks, right? Where it's like, okay, there's 60 or there's 120 cards total, and even there's some duplicates. So you only need to learn
Sure.
like then the base lands you understand really quickly. So there's like 80 card names and what they do and their mana cost, so that you can be playing a game
Mm.
and try to correctly anticipate whether your opponent has cancel or Doomblade, right?
Mm.
So like standard often is set up like that, or at least it felt like it was in like the
Sure.
2010 to 2020 kind of era. But if you don't make it through rotation, because it just like I think a lot of players just like heart sink at not being able to play their decks anymore, and that's why I was asking about how you felt about Brawl and the rotation, because I think it's tough for a lot of players to say like, oh, I lost my deck, I don't get to play my
Yeah,
deck
I
in
mean,
2 weeks.
look, it did suck. I love these decks. That's why I
Sure,
kept them.
sure, okay,
But also there's an intrinsic notion of transience, an
right,
intrinsic notion of like when you look at the way I approached the cards was, again, I'm giving cards I've used a second life,
right.
and eventually that second life will end. Fine, I get it. I mean, it sucked. If I was them, I would have found a way to be like, hey, keep your brawl decks, but like let's just set up eras that you can just pull out, and like there's no
Right.
reason to stop playing.
Choose
Just be
your
like,
own
yep,
brawl. Yeah,
yeah,
there's
build
the
your own
choose your
standard
own
type of
standard
brawl, right?
format that
Yeah.
kind of never quite got off the ground entirely. Like some people probably have played it. I haven't been to an event for it. I never ran an event for
I
it.
guess I would be like, you can keep your brawl deck. Just say like, hey, it is these two this year's standard. You can play them against anybody. It doesn't matter because they're all about the rough same power level.
Yeah,
But the other reason is I liked Brawl a lot because it let the set mechanics show off. It
right.
let them really just synergize and sing in a way that a really good limited deck does.
You always get to play that signpost uncommon in a brawl deck.
Right. Like that your energy deck is going to come together. That your whatever I don't know, like Ikoria monocolor or like
Yeah,
your Eldraine
mutate deck,
monocolor deck is
or
gonna yeah, your mutate
sure,
deck is gonna work.
Eldraine monocolored deck, or
Yeah,
your
right.
venture into
Theros
the dungeon
enchantments.
deck, Theros enchantments. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Utopia Brawl is hella fun, right?
Right.
Like she's not gonna show up in EDH anytime soon, but she's fun when every card is gonna synergize.
Sweet.
It makes me grumbly. Because I feel like that format was mismanaged and destroyed and it never got a chance to shine because they just marketed it wrong. I hope they don't do the same thing with Gladiator, but Gladiator Wheeler came in with a definite clear vision and that helps a lot.
It's not just Wheeler. There's a bunch of
Well,
community
Wheeler
members
and
and
his
other
team.
people from the mods. Yeah, exactly. And the very beginnings of Gladiator is interesting too, because there was kind of a there was kind of like a, what's it called, a convergence, is that right?
Mm,
Like when several streams come together to
yes.
become one. As Arena was like in its infancy, there were a few different sects around the world, pockets of players who were casually brewing and like playing little tournaments, or just engaging with each other like through friend matches, and like had,
Yeah.
so I think I'm still on two discords. I don't know if I left ever, but like it was like there was the Arena Highlander one, and then it was active for like about 9 months, maybe a year, and then once the like Gladiator Discord came up, there was just like the last post. It's like, okay, everybody, we're joining up with this team, and like this is where you're gonna go. It's great. But they have done a fantastic job, and not to um belittle Wheeler's contribution at all. Definitely hardworking man, very important member of the community, and like, champion of the format. Absolutely. Speaking of Wheeler, I wonder if I might ask a little bit about the process of his recent rise to CAG power.
I'm gonna have to volume edit that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. I was just like, oh no, it's gonna blow your but it's okay. Wheeler deserves an explosive ear. Um, so here's the thing.
Absolutely.
Now, I need to disclaim this because sometimes the bosses listen. I am not single-handedly responsible for this. Nobody is single-handedly responsible for this.
Sure.
But like every now and every couple of months or something, not a couple of months, every like year, the RC will come to us and say, like, hey guys, is there well, guys, gals, non-binary pals, is
Hey,
there
yeah,
anybody that you think would be worth bringing on? Is there any holes we are missing in our advisory board? Because let's be real, the whole point of the commander advisory group is that we have a number of disparate people who come from different phases of the format, who look at the format differently and respect and respond to different demographics and play styles. And we're there to offer one-on-one advice to the RC when they have questions about that pertain to our group, right?
right.
Or like our specific ideology. And they're like, who are we missing? Who aren't we talking to? And what names do you guys have to bring to us? And with the emphasis, with the idea of like, we want to bring a more diverse panel. We want Commander to not just look like four old guys. We want it to look like the people who actually play.
Sure.
And so, like, I was like, okay, look, if I was going to suggest names to people, and everybody in the in the Commander advisory group brought up their own different groups of names, and the three names I provided were three people who I felt were personally really responsible for, making my Commander enjoyable these days, and that was Rebel, Wheeler, and Tim Willoughby. And because Willoughby is a guy who, first off, one of the most erudite dudes in England and absolute genius when it comes to like understanding the format, but he doesn't talk a lot because he's got his own store to run, and people know him more as being a commentator than a commander
Yeah,
writer.
I've enjoyed his commentary, like when I've
But
gotten to
like,
see him on
yeah,
screen. Yeah.
but like his articles are what got me into Commander in the first place.
Oh, nice.
And like, obviously, Rebel is genius. She's just brilliant in every facet of the game. But Wheeler was like one of the ones I was like, look, I get it. He's another white dude. He's gay. It's a demographic. It works. But also, there is literally nobody on the planet who understands how to shepherd a fan made format the way that Ben Wheeler does, who is like, just absolute genius here when it comes to reading the room, understanding what it takes to work with WotC or to work with a community or to help a format thrive, and how to make minute changes in the ship to help it continue to go into clean waters. And obviously me and Wheeler have been spinning up this podcast that we've been working on that had to take a hiatus while he had his brain injury. Um, but in talking to him, I'm like, this dude knows Commander and knows Magic just like LSV level intrinsically. And
He talks about it like it's a problem. And it's like I sympathize with that, where it's like a lot of his brain is taken up with like
By like
random like
garbage, right?
invasion draft trash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like nobody needs to care about Odyssey's 38th pick in the draft,
yeah,
but but so I like, and obviously, like the RC is not dumb. They've spoken to all these people before. They knew who these folks were. Wheeler's been on their stream, and more importantly, Wheeler has had lengthy conversations with Sheldon and with Gavin and with Toby and Scott about Commander. Like they would bring him in and just have long ass chats with him. Like Sheldon had like a 3 or 4 hour long just meeting with Wheeler to suss him out. And
awesome.
frankly, I think that but for the need to have him like go through the motions of going through the ladder of like actually joining the committee and then growing up, I think frankly, if we don't see Wheeler on the rules committee itself in like 3 or 4 years, I would be stunned.
Well,
Be-
I'll say this, having played a format week in week out for years, and during the heyday of which he was like a very regular member of the Highlander Council, I like totally endorse his ability to assess what needs to be banned, what should be allowed, which directions to kind of push the format in order to bring up healthy and fun games. Uh,
Mhm.
so that's great. And yeah, thanks for answering my question. I like realized
Well,
when I saw this announcement, like, oh, I have just no idea that I didn't know that like the CAG
he
wants
was
more
even
members or the RC wants more members. I didn't know that. I didn't know like what the process was. I'm like super curious about it, and it's just lovely to hear all these like true
well
things
because
about my friend that I don't really think about all
yeah,
the time.
like I
Yeah,
mean, look, I'm not gonna lie, Rebel and Wheeler are both really really good friends of mine,
cool.
and
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's nepotistic because frankly, I think they're both more deserving to be on the group than I am because I'm just a class clown, right? Like I know Commander, I know intrinsically, I know what casuals want, but those two, and like it's like Olivia. Olivia Gober Hicks is one of the most brilliant people in all of Magic, and people don't realize that because she is like she came to the game only through Commander and only plays Commander, but what she has is the ability to look at a group of people, organize them, understand them, and help them understand what they don't understand about themselves. And
right.
like take it and like when you look at like Wheeler's got the same kind of ability to look at this group of people and sit there and say, like, you guys don't understand this, but the problems you're having and the anger you're having are caused by this thing that you're requesting, and I'm
Right.
instead going to gently push you this way, and you will have a much better time without ever knowing this was not your idea to begin with. Same with like Rebel, she's got this just intrinsic grasp of high-end competitive play and also how it fits into an ecosystem that is casual driven, and like bringing that kind of pairing together is just like we don't have that capacity
That's
on the CAG.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing that, like, again, sort of mirrors like the Canadian Highlander community, where we have this
Mm.
format that started as casual, and the deck building is still sort of casual. Like the impetus to play any given deck, or to play a tournament, or to like brew a new deck, it's the same as from Commander, or Kitchen Table, where like you see a card and it's cool and you want to make it work inside of your format, but then the games are just so sweaty and
Well, you
cutthroat.
know what? It's like that's a thing. Canlander is a proof of one of those build casually, play spiky,
Right.
right? Like, but then you look at some of those Canlander decks, and like I've seen Marshall's Canlander deck. That is not a casual deck.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's a murder machine.
you can also build it spiky, play spiky. That's totally fine. There's
Well,
plenty
it's
of
like
those players. Yeah.
it's one of those things when you look like Surge, who is obviously one of the most beloved and kind people I know. His decks are definitely like I'm pinning you to the tree with your ears, and you're going to sit here and suffer while I light your toes on fire. And you're like, what is going on? You
Yeah.
were nice. He's like, yeah, we'll take you out to ice cream afterwards once I drag your corpse out of the water.
Surge does like to play stacks
Yeah.
and like mana denial strategies. Pretty into that.
So, what's your game? Where are you at?
You like in Canadian Highlander?
Yeah, or just like what kind of magic
Magic
do you want
cards?
to play?
Oh, I just want to play more Gladiator, honestly.
Mm,
Like, the pandemic's still happening, and so I'm not like the most comfortable going to all the events. And yeah, I'm like down on alchemy. The thing about alchemy is that like while it affects the other formats that aren't alchemy, it
mm.
doesn't affect them that much. Like I think it affects historic a bit more than it affects gladiator. It does affect gladiator. It matters in gladiator, but we get we get kind of like the best of both worlds, I think, playing Gladiator, where you're allowed to play pretty much any card on Arena unless it's been rebalanced. You can't play the rebalanced version. You have to play whichever like version first came out. I'm pretty sure I have that right. It's so confusing having to build a Gladiator deck, but it's better now that we have got the queue and we've got the drop down menu or whatever. But remembering exactly how it works is funny. Um,
Yes.
so we're not totally warped by alchemy, but alchemy is still kind of the thing. Like if you're trying to compete on Arena and Constructed, you basically have to play alchemy cards. Like it seems like Standard is like not the most pushed format for like tournaments. Really, you still get into tournaments or whatever, but the ones that are through the app, it seems like they regularly want you to play the alchemy cards.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way.
So yeah, for my engagement with Magic, I have like stuff that LRR is doing, and then I have Arena basically. I mean, I own a MTGO account. I just don't care to boot it up very often. Although you can play Canadian Highlander on MTGO, so it's got that going.
I'm trying to think of the last time I played
I mean,
Commander. I played
my friends who still
MTGO.
play say it's sweet. Like you can play all these formats. You can play Pioneer and Modern and Legacy and Vintage, and even you can sort of play Commander on MTGO. I know that like the rules are a little bit different, or just the way you attack is a little bit different, but something like that. But yeah, I'm on the side of I don't really love having to boot up MTGO. So I'm looking forward to the next time it's as easy to play Gladiator as it was 2 weeks ago, because I'm still kind of just in a like, I don't know, is afterglow the right word? I don't want to get too weird
Basking in
here.
the happiness.
Yeah, just like, well, I haven't played that much Magic since then. Like, we just had the PPR, so I got to do some of that. But like, I was like, that ended, and I was like, okay, I guess I got to find a video game I like now, And I've like popped into Arena to like try to crush all the quests a couple times a week or whatever like that, but not the same engagement level. Um, Although I could tell you a secret, actually. I am this secret for everybody. It's okay. I need to build a commander deck for my friend Adam. It's going to be Yarok Commander, and
Oh.
he's in this interest. Oh, you don't like Yarok? Too
Well,
boring?
Yarok look, I love Yarok. I think
Okay.
Yarok is cool, but Yarok is also one of those commanders that's become so played out and is just
Mm,
so strong.
okay.
It's so strong.
Well, it's going to be
Mm,
in Adam's hands. All he wants to do is like replay his Elvish Visionaries.
fair. Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you want to tell me what like the weirdest fun cards for Yarok are, or like
Oh
Yarok B
man,
team or
Yarok.
whatever that. If you have any favorites
The
about
thing
that,
is,
because
Yarok is
I'm
like
doing that right now. I'm
Muldrotha.
building commander deck. Yeah.
Yeah, like Yarok is like Muldrotha, right? It's like one of those commanders that's basically so strong that you just are already kind of at the max with that thing. Uh,
So whatever you're doing, it's gonna be fine. Hey, just because the second trigger is too powerful.
let me give me 10 seconds. Let me
Okay.
think about this. So
Other than that, I'm
Yarok,
playing Canadian Highlander. I have Mono Black sleeved up right now, as well as Blue Moon, and I really want to build Academy. I want to put the Academy deck back together for next time I go
as
play.
in like the traditional
Yeah, you have a
like Urza style.
blue based Tolarian Academy deck that plays a bunch of mana rocks. There's Timeless Lotus from the new set, which is like an extra Gilded Lotus if you're going that deep, which I like to. I like to be playing like the really greedy kind of mana rocks that get you to the like, big payoffs of, activating your stuff, or just like hitting a time twister and playing your whole hand out that turn or whatever. So I'm looking forward to trying that deck. Plus, I haven't played Canadian Highlander Tolarian Academy since the Kamigawa Commander set dropped, and there was like two really good cards for Canadian Highlander from that one. The turtle that they play in Legacy as well, I think.
The turtle.
Yeah, there's like a
Oh,
there's
the one that looks like the Pokemon,
yeah, there's I
the
forget
blue
what it's
turtle,
called.
right?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sure they'll hit us in the comments or whatever for what it's called. But it's
Oh,
like,
Kappa something, right?
yeah, affinity. I think it has affinity for
Kappa
artifacts.
Cannoneer is the
Kappa
improvised
Cannoneer.
one.
Yeah, so it pumps your artifact creature team, and no, improvise, not affinity, right?
Yeah,
So you
it's
can
got
cast it with
improvise
improvise.
ward 4, a
Mhm.
4/4, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer, and it can't be blocked. This card is pretty nutty.
The fact that it triggers off itself is just so crazy. But yeah, it's gonna have. There's Canadian Highlander decks you can play where this thing hits a lot of triggers once you get going, and then also from I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but I know that in the blue white Kamigawa commander deck, there's a new March of the Machines, some sort of enchantment or sorcery that turns all of your non-artifact creature, non-creature artifacts into creatures.
Yeah, hang on. Let
But
me.
it's like better than the other March of the Machines is, because I don't usually include those ones as a win con. I usually just go for lots of mana and a walking ballista.
Yeah, let's see here. Cyberdrive Awakener. No, that turns one. Oh yeah, Cyberdrive Awakener. When it enters the battlefield until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4,
Yeah.
and other artifact creatures you control have flying. So basically, everything you have is like, oh, my treasures are suddenly flying 4/4. GG.
Yeah. So I want to play that, but in 1v1, basically. If you're familiar with that commander deck, I want to do something like that, but with old broken cards
The
too.
Shorkai is just such a busted commander, though. That
Hmm.
stupid the Genesis engine, the mech thing that basically nobody ever actually pilots, but everybody uses to combo off because it's got the pay one and tap it, draw two cards, and then discard a card and create a 1/1 pilot.
Oh
So you
yeah.
put that in with intruder alarm, and then you can just like
Oh no. Yeah.
go to crazy town. Yarok is such a the thing is like Yarok is one of those commanders that like I don't want to just sit there and try to tell you to do weird things with, because Yarok's whole point is, hey, this is Sultai recycling. Pick your favorite cards you want to just bring back from the yard, throw in some aristocraty nonsense, and then just go to town. Like one of my favorite cards in it is Tireless Tracker and Tireless the other one,
Oh yeah.
um
The food and
Provisioner.
provisioner. Yeah.
Because think about it, and like Ramanak Excavator,
Hmm.
you take this, or not even Ramanak, you just need Yarok in play. You crack a fetch, or you throw a strip mine away, bring it back and get a couple extra tokens, and then you're just going off to town. Like think about this. Think about this is just like base level. So Yarok, for those of you who don't know all these cards offhand, is a 2 and a Sultai, so 2 black, green, blue, 3/5, Death Touch and Lifelink, because why not? That says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a trigger, ability of a permanent to trigger, the ability triggers an additional time. So if you play your Elvish Visionary, you get to draw 2 cards. If you play a land with Tireless Tracker Provisioner, you get 4 tokens or 2 tokens or whatever. But like I think about things like Uro, right? Like Uro shows up, you get to get double the trigger. It's gross. Risen Reef, Coiling Oracle, all these cards that are just like, what would be fun? What if I had a doubling season or a Panharmonicon just for my favorite Sultai cards? Like friggin' Massacre Worm. I
Oh yeah,
love
that's a
Massacre
good
Worm.
one. Yeah, we should probably
Massacre
get
Worm's
that.
one of my favorite cards ever. And the animation on Arena is so cool with the big buzzsaw that shows
Yeah, I
up.
like I like that animation too. Massacre Worm is an interesting one. It has an interesting Canadian Highlander in Victoria story where just this one black green rock player played it like without fail week after week, and like a lot of members of the community were like, "This is not Damnation. Like you don't need to put this card in your deck. It doesn't always work." But then she kept playing it so often that we got enough reps of seeing her win with it that it was like, yeah, okay, there's a place for this card. Like
It's
there's a
fun.
time when this is correct. Because
You know
it
what?
has a win con strap to it, so
When you
pretty fun.
have Massacre Worm and Meat Hook Massacre sitting next to each other, it's
Mm,
just a good wholesome time for nobody. It's just like bad things are gonna happen and you're gonna die.
fair. Shivam, you're telling me about all these great cards and great interactions, and yet you say you have a tough time deck building.
You
But
know
it
what my
seems like
problem is?
you've got the knowledge. You understand. Like you're there, which is
My
what we
problem
all
is
thought.
editing. My problem is editing.
Being
I have
willing to
a
make
sh-
those cuts. Yeah,
Yeah, like I can come up with 400 cards that should go into a deck, but I need 60.
yeah.
Right? Like 60 plus 40 lands or 62 and 38, whatever it is. And then I'm just like, here's a pile of cards I want to put in here. Rebel, like every time I run into Rebel, for instance, I just bring her a shoebox full of cards and I'm like, this is a deck I want to build that's just
But
pile of
it's a
crap on my
shoebox
desk.
right now,
Well, it's like it's a bundle full of cards, right? Like a fat pack. And I'm like,
and you just hand her the
yeah, I'm
shoebox.
like, here, solve my problem, please.
Okay, fair enough.
But like that's the thing. I can give you a small pool to draw from. I just need somebody to help me narrow that down to a deck,
Let me
right?
share my process because I don't have Rebel in my life. I mean, I hope to meet her,
I think you would
but I'm
like her.
not going
She's
to hand her
great.
a shoebox if I do. Okay, so I've got 300 cards. I need to turn it into Canadian Highlander deck, right?
Mm.
And so the first pass, I make a pile that's just like these cards absolutely have to go in the deck because they're like why I'm building the deck. They're the beginning of the idea. This is going to include some bad cards most of the time if I'm building the deck, because it's like I specifically started this process to find out how this new card from Capenna or whatever that like draws cards when creatures die or something like that. Like I wanted to find out how that card interacts with like some other kind of deck I've played before or have seen. And so I've got this first pile that's just like absolutely crucial, and then I figure out how many slots I've got, and then I take the rest of the cards, and I'm like, okay, we need to fill this many because we're gonna play this many lands. That do you have a tough time with the lands too, or is lands usually pretty smooth?
Oh boy.
Tough time with the lands too. Okay, all right.
That's actually the real I mean, here's the thing.
I can't
I
help you with that one.
know
I'm good at that
I
one.
know roughly how many slots I need, and then I've started just using like the handicap of going like finding the 60 cards or whatever I need for my main deck, and then going putting them into like arena, like architect or deck builder, and going there and sitting down and saying like, give me the percentages of mana that I have.
Right.
Like once I know how many pips I have of each and can kind of get an eyeball of like what I need, then I can fudge it with like throw in all the random assorted dual lands of these colors. It got a little harder with 3 color, with 4 color, but frankly, once you kind of have the eyeball of how many sources you need, it fills itself out, and then you just make sure you have a slot or two for like your ghost quarter or your reliquary towers or whatever.
Okay. All right. So you're solid with that. So I'll just
Lands I'm kind of good on. It's
all
just
right.
like
But those last 250 cards, because you got this small pile, there's just like you're gonna play this, and then you have all these ideas. You see all these cards; they all would work kind of well with it. And so, like, I guess for Commander, it's a little different because I'm thinking about. I'll share my process for Canadian Highlander, where I'm like just usually trying to win the tournament or do the best job of making those first pile of cards shine. And
mm,
so I'm willing to cut cards based on like their general power level or whether they're my pet cards, because it's like I already got the pet cards in the first pile. They'll be in the pet card will make it into
sure.
the next deck or whatever. I'm able to do that because I use that as my focus. I use that as my way of forgiving myself for not achieving cards 101 through 299. I'm just like, it's okay because I did this, right? I satisfied the like urge to like play my serendipity.
Mm.
Does that make? I don't know if that helps or makes sense, but I've got X number of slots, or maybe you have to care about the curve, or make sure you have enough removal. Any of those things, but you just go through the second pile and fill it out, and it's a little easier if you did the first pile. That's my
Yeah,
process
but the
anyway.
problem is my first pile is 400 cards deep.
Okay, all right. Well, if your first pile is still 400 cards, that's a lot of ideas you're getting into one
Well,
deck,
like
Shiva. Good for you.
here's the thing, right? Like, let's take for instance the deck I've been working on for a while now, my Brea deck.
Okay,
It's very powerful, very strong, but I was looking at it because I shelved it because it was too strong for my and too unfocused. And I
okay,
looked at it again today for the first time in a year, like my deck list to just check it out. And what I came up with was like, wow, there are like 4 deck themes here. There's like tokens, there's aristocrats, there's Feldon Reanimator, whatever. And I'm like, this is just a pile of good stuff, creatures that wins because Wormcoil Engine is insanely powerful. Right, like or like Battle Ball is just really what do they call
yeah.
it? Mere Battlesphere,
Mirror
just a really
Battlesphere,
good
yeah,
card. It's just a really good card,
it's good.
right? Like Brea can combo off with anything, and I've got Eldrazi Displacer in there, so just I can make sure weird stuff happens. But when I was looking at this, it's like, oh, this deck is just crap.
Mm.
It is like one of my favorite cards in the minute, and let me just put them in here. If I'm actually going to make this into a real deck with a theme and a point and a view, it needs a lot of work. I mean, there's times when that's easy for me. Like when I look at Hapatra or when I look at like Titania, I was like, okay, Titania had way more cards that I could use than I needed for that deck, but I was able to filter it down and to make it into a very tight deck. But like Mazzy, I built it after I came up for the PPR. I
Yeah,
came back and I was like, what are my favorite auras that are not already in my Tuvasa deck? How can I maximize this whole looping thing she's got going on? And once I figured that out, I was able to sort it down, build it down, and make a deck that actually is hella fun.
Massey seems like an easier commander to run with because her abilities are so specific. Like I've
Yes.
picked up a few from drafts, and like I remember our draft game for Baldur's Gate. I don't know how many times you got to hit the trigger, or like it's pretty rare that like
It
you
didn't come up in draft
yeah,
at all.
it's hard in that format to get her to work. I think maybe she was like kind of. There's a few things I figured out eventually. It's like okay, there's this like +2/+10 enchantment or something. So if your creature dies with that or whatever, like
There are a few,
yeah,
but the real gimmick for I mean, there were also like the impetuses were there, the goad
right,
ones.
right,
But like
okay,
the thing is, like, the card that makes her shine, for instance, is this enchantment from Kaladesh called, like,
Now it's a
I
new
don't know.
land. The one white. We'll bring it back
It
to your
no,
hand. Or
no,
no,
this
it's
is
not
a
that one.
1
Okay.
green, land it's a 1 green aura for a land, which, lets your land tap for any color, but when you sack it, you draw a card.
Oh,
So,
not abundant growth. Yeah, I
it's
know the
like
one you're saying.
undiscovered
Unbridled
so
growth or
yes,
something. Or
unbridled growth.
yeah, yeah,
That card is
yeah.
broken in half in Mazzy because
Right.
suddenly with Yavimaya in play, basically every land you have taps for draw a card. And if you've got like freaking Femaref Enchantress and like, some other Enchantress things, then you cast it, draw a card. Then sacrifice it, draw 3 cards. Then it goes back under Mazzy, tap another 4, sack it, draw, on and
Right.
on and on. Suddenly you have like 800 cards in your hand. And it's just disgusting. It's
And she's red,
amazing.
so you could play that fireball where you discard cards from modern.
You know what I could do? I could freaking play Grape Shot given how many times I cast and recast
Right?
it.
Yeah, you could
Oh
just
my
play
god,
grape
I
shot.
need to put Grape Shot in
We're
this deck. That
playing
would be
grape
so
shot
dumb.
Massey.
Oh god.
Yeah.
That is so
I
stupid.
feel so
I
much
need to
better.
put Grape Shot and freaking like the Mana Doubler or something. Oh god, I need to put give me a red X spell.
Well, yeah, it's I'm trying
Blade
to. Well, there's fireball, right? But I'm trying
well
or
yeah, but
Bane fire. Do you want to be able to split it between opponents? Or you
what's
want
the
to,
one that or the one that does 13 damage to everything?
not
Uh
Shivan Meteor, Blasphemous Act.
Blasphemous Act.
Okay, that's not an X spell, but
No,
yes,
but then, like, I'm sure there's, like, an X spell or something that just, like, I don't know, Comet Storm, everybody's got 300 of those things.
that's true.
But yeah, you get the point, though. Um, before we go, though, I did wanna ask you a couple of things because,
Oh, great.
um, before we go, let me talk to you more. Um, one of the things that interested me, fascinated me, actually, so you and I are both parents, and we both have kids about roughly the same age. I've only got 1, you've got, like, 2?
Yeah, if we put
Uh,
my kids' ages together, I think we catch up with your kid.
yeah, yeah, my son is 8. Yours
Okay.
what?
I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. So yeah, we're
Mm,
yeah, we're in the same ballpark. Yeah.
same
We're
neighborhood.
still in elementary school. Yeah.
Yeah. So you stay at home and raise them?
Yeah, well, I mean, next week, my younger son's going to start kindergarten, so
Mm,
I'm at a cool crossroads right here. Actually, I'm also like trying to decide what I want to be when I grow up.
know the
At,
feeling.
at age 40, yeah, exactly. So, but I have been raising my kids, and at home for the past. Oh boy, yeah. It's 5.5 years now. Like
Mm,
my daughter was born, and I was working 2 jobs at the time actually. Um, and then she was born in June, and then at Christmas time, my partner who'd been staying home with her was like, you know what, I could go back to work. That'd be cool for me. And I was like, okay, okay, yeah,
tag, you're it.
I'm down. Let's try this, and it worked. It's been tough. Probably the hardest job I've ever had. No, yeah, we can definitely go with the hardest job I've ever had. It's been hard,
It's
and
hard to
I have
keep kids entertained.
yeah, I have like you know I like to think that I didn't disrespect, primarily women and caregivers before, but my respect for women, women with children and caregivers, across all types has gone way up since joining their ranks. I did not realize how much work it is to keep kids entertained, clean, fed,
That is the
healthy, like
goddamn truth.
not hurt, like keeping them from hurting themselves, you and each other.
It's
I had
like
my
you look at the
my son,
dad in Bluey and you're like,
yeah,
"How?
yeah.
How?"
I had my kid throwing his boots at me today, and we were at the public park. He's just like too
Mm.
tired. My kids didn't sleep great last night, and so like picking him up from summer camp, he doesn't want to leave the playground, and he's just like he found like a 1x4. There's like just randomly building materials at the playground today. I was like, great. And
Oh, great.
like trying to stab me with it because he's too tired. And yeah,
Check this out.
I managed to stay kind of cool.
My son went to grandma's house last week,
Okay.
and grandma was dealing with the plumbing problem, so she couldn't watch him all the time. So he's going through my old stuff in my room
Oh,
and found a sword that I had bought as a child or as a college student back
not
when I
from
was young and dumb.
plowshares.
No, like a
Okay.
15 mind you, it's not the best investment I made. A $15 sword off of eBay made in Pakistan, basically a very long kitchen knife with a cool handle.
Okay.
But he found it because he's like, "Papa's got a sword. We're gonna go." And he's like pulling this thing out. He's like, "Look, Daddy, I've got a sword." And he pulls his giant thing out on grandma, and grandma's like, "What the hell?"
Why is there a sword in my kitchen?
Yeah, and suddenly she's giving me a phone call like, "So, when were you gonna tell me about this sword you bought?" And I'm like, "It was 20 years ago, Mom."
That's incredible.
But yeah, so luckily we encourage him to just go back into the backyard and slash some weeds if he really wants to. But Yeah, so I understand the feeling of, "Oh, my son has grabbed a thing and is pointing it at me, and this is bad." But
Yeah.
he's 8, so he understands don't point these at people.
Yeah, I'm really
Um,
hoping the next few years, we're gonna make some leaps in maturity. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
waiting for it. I'm still waiting for it. Yeah,
But no, like, I basically became a full-time stay-at-home dad thing during beginning of pandemic
right.
because, like, my job laid me off right or not well, my job when we went to stay-at-home, work from home stuff, like, they just kinda stopped giving me things to do, even though I was getting a full-time salary, so I was just like, "Alright, well, I'm
Okay,
gonna
so you
raise my
started
kid."
putting more of your time into
Yeah, I was
setting up the
like,
kid.
"My
Yeah,
son has gotta go through 1st grade from home, so I'm gonna just do that." And then they, like, Comcast bought us and laid off my division, so I'm like, "Alright, well, now I'm just dad at home, that's what we're doing."
right,
And it's been rewarding, but also completely insane because he shares my same ADHD problems and neuroses, and when
right.
2 of the same personality types are hanging out together, it becomes very frustrating. But, God, it's a challenge, and I look at my
Yeah.
grandma who's like, I raised 6 kids by myself because her husband was, like, 30 years older than her and died way young,
Okay.
and so I'm like, "How did you do that in a one-room house in India?
Right.
How come I can't do that in, like, a giant house in America?" And it's like, "What? This is so hard." But I'm lucky that my wife is very, very good at this too. Um,
Yeah, I have help too. I think
yeah,
most men in
and, like,
our
having grandma
society,
nearby is real helpful.
yeah, who are doing it have help. I totally have help,
Yeah, but
and it's
I
still
look at
hard
single
even with
parents.
help. Yeah, I would happily have more help and still complain that it was hard. I think
Fact. I
I
look
think
at
I could.
single parents with
Yeah,
awe.
yeah, yeah.
That's just they're doing God's work, man.
I look at
Um,
them with compassion and sympathy for sure. Yeah,
yes, compassion, lots of compassion and empathy and sympathy.
yeah.
How long have you been vegetarian?
So I've been vegetarian since. Sorry, what was it? Was it 2005? It's sometime early. No, it was, yeah. I want to say 2003. Yeah, it was when I was over in Vancouver studying. I had stopped eating meat, and then I cut down on cheese just the September before the pandemic. So like, I'm mostly eating a plant based diet now. I have this weird thing where it's like I'm not throwing away scraps, and the rest of the people I live with eat like meat and cheese and
Mhm.
everything. So like, I when I'm making a meal for myself, or if they're not around for a weekend or something. It's just like vegan food. But like, I end up eating like extra Lunchables, which sometimes include like everything. So, and that's been the case since having kids that eat food. So I'm hoping again in a couple years it'll be like they just kind of manage their own food and eat what they take, so that I'm going to go back to being like, okay, I've been strictly vegan since like 2024 or something. But yeah, most of my adult life, I wanted to stop eating meat actually as a kid, but it was hard growing up in an omnivore house. I tried a couple of times. Like, I think the first time I tried, I was in grade 8, which for me
Mm.
would have been in like 1993. Um, and so, yeah, like, like dumb
The
little kid, Nelson was just like, I'll just stop. I just won't eat meat anymore. And then 40 hours passed or something, and I was just like, I don't feel so good, and like open up the fridge, and like the meat is like kind of half glowing at me. It's like your my brain is just like, you need to eat something other than potato chips, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you do.
yeah,
Things we learn as parents, right?
yeah.
Like, my best friend when I was growing up, him and his sister basically decided that one day they're like, "We don't like the way ham tastes. We're just gonna be vegetarians now." And
Okay,
their parents were pseudo hippies, I guess, and they were just like, "All right, well, I guess we're gonna do that." These are like 2 white kids in central Massachusetts who were just like suddenly decided to be vegetarians, and it was
sweet.
convenient because it was the first time I'd ever met another vegetarian who wasn't Indian. And
Okay,
when I was a kid, I could go over to their house and just eat
you
and
could eat
know that
whatever
I
they
could
had.
get
Yeah,
food, and it was awesome.
that's really cool.
But it was wild that their parents would just be like, "All right, here's a bunch of peas instead. Let's go." And I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know if I had the confidence to like sell it to my family, or if I did, I don't know if I ran into like a ton of support. Like, I think possibly, I don't remember clearly, but possibly it was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to eat the meatloaf, Nelson. Like, I'm not cooking anything else for you. Like, figure your life
"Figure it
out.
out, buddy."
This is what I
Yeah.
made. Yeah.
Yeah, that
And I
we've
get
definitely
that
had that.
as a parent.
Well, oh yeah, my son is like, "No, I want peanut butter jelly sandwich." I'm like, "Not for lunch, dinner, and breakfast, Holmes. So you're going to eat this food."
You need to eat and vegetable once a day at least.
Oh, parenting life, holy crap. You know, last thing, I remember because you were mentioning the other day, like, we should talk about Soul Ring versus,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dual
Just on
Lands. What
Twitter.
did you mean?
Oh,
So, like
just because you're like, I want a Volk, but it's expensive. right?
It is.
And it's just funny, like having the conversation with people who have like very expensive cards, right? But like it's just the whole Magic card prices thing, and like the stories of people investing in Magic cards or just buying Magic cards to play with. If you don't want to call it investing, that's fine or whatever. Like, just like is so wild and just vastly different from A to B. And I've gotten to see that like working at an LGS.
Right.
But it's like, you probably have, I kind of wanted to mention it because it's like, I bet if we looked at your collection, we could cut a swath of cards that you never are going to play. Maybe you think you're going to play them. So let's include
Real
the cards.
talk, I'm never going to play them.
Let's include the cards you're never going to play, plus all the cards that you think you might play, and we take all those and we try to trade them for a Volk. It's like, well, are we getting a Volk or are we getting two Volks? But I want to say we're getting at least a Volk.
Like, here's the thing. I've never had that discipline, and I desperately need somebody to come to my house and just help me. Because one
Right,
of the problems with when you are ADHD and when you're a hoarder and when you're like a collector type, every card is like, oh, but you don't know when I'll need this. I'm like, do you really need that 15th giant growth from, whatever like Mirage or printing it is? I'm like,
right,
no, I don't. But real, like, I made a quest when Las Vegas had come around, when the first GP back after pandemic or after the lockdown finally eased up. And I was like, I want to get a piece of power. So I
okay,
went through and spent 3 days and collected all the like fancy, super expensive cards I knew I was never going to touch,
right,
like Solitudes and whatever Fury, random like cards that are just like
sure,
hundreds of dollars or something, like random Urza Saga rares and things like attunements and, whatever,
sure. Just
Yawgmoth
cards,
Academy Rectors,
just cards that
things.
don't go in your soldier deck or your Chuvasa deck or your
Yeah,
Brea deck.
cards that are either I already have the one I need
Yeah,
or are just literally I don't give a crap about. I'm like, I'm gonna sell these. And I came out with enough money to either get a fancy beta soul ring that was like pristine condition or like a underground tea that looked like somebody had driven over
right.
it.
Okay,
And
okay.
I was like, I'm gonna do the thing. Like I can't get power, obviously,
Get the
but
thing
by
that brings me
God,
the most joy, right?
maybe
Yeah,
I'll get my favorite card of all time and have money left over to be able to get an invention monocrypt. So I was like,
that's
two for
sweet.
one, let's go. But you're right. I could probably filter my collection and get cards I don't care about that have somehow spiked in price because I'm not paying attention, sell them and get a Volk. And I really ought to.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the only reason I brought it up. Is just like, sure, the price of Volk is crazy. The price of a lot of Magic cards is just so wild.
Absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd and like hard to predict and weird and and it's all that. But y- remember, you do have Magic cards, so it's like it's not just the Magic card that you want that's being affected by this.
Yeah.
And if you don't have Magic cards and you're listening to this, sorry,
Why are you
the
here?
price of Magic cards is weird, and there are certain times of life that it's better to buy them. Usually in the past, but also possibly in the present or future, depending on the card. It's all very weird. So good luck in your own personal journey of buying Magic cards and selling Magic cards. If you
Yeah.
do that,
I mean,
I
like,
can't
look,
recommend it.
it's not. I mean, look, I'm looking at my desk right now. The cards that are on the tops of four different piles I'm looking at. One is Savannah, one is a Force of Vigor, one is an Esper Sentinel, and one is a Seasoned Pyromancer. So right there is a couple $100 worth of cards. I mean, mind you, I'm not selling any of those because I just bought them, but the principle is there that like in my just stacks, I've got piles, and
Yeah,
it's dumb.
absolutely. No, and we all do. I totally sympathize.
Yeah. All right, man. This has been a delightful talk. I know you and I have been trying to do this for a long time, and I hope we can get a chance to do it again
Yeah, I had a
because
great
I feel
time.
like we have a lot to talk about, and you're very good at talking about magic cards.
Thank you, Shivam. It's a pleasure talking to you
Yeah,
again.
I don't know. I like you a lot, and I think that you deserve more respect than you get, and that's why I try to make sure that people respect you. But if people wanted to find you, your stuff, your streams, your whatever, where could they go?
Yeah, if you want to disrespect me to my face, please come
Don't
to www.twitch.tv forward
slash
slash
Wheeler.
Coach Nelly. Yeah, yeah. It's Coach Nelly on Twitch, Coach Nelly MTG on Twitter, and then I also have I think it's Coach Nelly on YouTube. Let me double check that. Hold on. I have a YouTube channel. It's very new. I
Oh,
hope.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Is it Coach Nelly? Let's go with that.
Let's
Yeah,
let's assume.
let's assume it's Coach Nelly on YouTube. It's so new, I'm not entirely sure what the account name is, but yeah, I'll probably have a link tree happening at some point. But that's what I do, and you can, of course, if you've not checked out Loading Ready Run on either the YouTubes or the Twitch, check that out. You can also find me there.
Yeah, you will find him at literally every PPR as a judge, giving the this is how you buckle your seatbelt video at the beginning, and also just judging through the thing. He's done judge calls on me at multiple PPRs. It's been great, no problem at all, because frankly, I I am much better at informal magic than I am at formal magic, and sometimes you need to be reminded that you don't get to do things for free. Uh, but as always, my friends, if you want to find me, you can find me at Gear Upgrade Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. on Tuesdays, or at YouTube on Thursdays. Thank you, EK. And remember, my friends, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.